Woodblock printmaker David Ball, not in the Asakusa shop today, but back in the workroom in Ome in the western outskirts of Tokyo, the place where I've lived for about 15 years now. Up to a couple of months ago, this room was buzzing. Sometimes 4 printers busy working at the same time, the 2 packing ladies busy preparing prints for shipping. These days, it's a lot more quiet. The 2 packing ladies have gone home today already because they're thinking if they don't get out of here pretty soon, they might not be able to get home tonight. I'll show you why at the end of this video. As for printers, there's just Tsushima-san left here now, and she's off today also for the same reason. Anyway, I came back here today because I need to use our laser printer. It's time to print out the hanshita, that thin sheet that I've been tracing all the last few weeks, ready to paste down on the wood to begin carving. The last time I spoke to you, I said I was nearly finished the tracing work. At that point, I had done everything except the small figures in the boats, and that was the most difficult part. The original in those places is blue printed on blue. It's misregistered in places, and it's printed carelessly with much excess tamari, that blotchy pigment that I showed you about in the previous video. It's next to impossible to ascertain exactly where the key block lines are. So using reference to some other copies, some new, some old, I've put some lines down there that I think make sense, although there is no way that I'm going to guarantee that they're exactly the same as the original. Given what I'm working with, I think this is the best we're going to be able to get. I think it'll look okay in the finished print. We'll see. Once it was all done, I then adjusted the DPI setting in the Photoshop file to give me the proper dimensions for printout. And there's an important and interesting point to make here. I'm not going to cut the key block at the same dimensions as the sample print I've been tracing. I'm going to make it slightly larger. Here's why. Imagine for a minute a wood block carved at, say, 100 by 100, whatever units you want to think about. Imagine a square shape carved at that size. We now want to print it. So the procedure is I get some Japanese paper, moisten it the day before. Has to be moistened in order to print the colors properly. Come to the printing, put pigment over the block, put the paper in place, rub it with the baren. There we go. I then dry the paper and we have a finished print. What size will that square shape be? It won't be 100. It'll be 90 something. Perhaps 98, perhaps 99. Perhaps it won't even be square. When we moistened the paper before printing, it expanded due to that moisture. We then took the impression at the 100 by 100 block and then dried the paper. The paper shrunk back down. As a result of this process of paper expansion and paper shrinking, traditional Japanese woodblock prints are always, no exceptions, always smaller than the blocks from which they are printed. Because of this, we get a very interesting phenomenon. The old days, somebody got a print, he wanted to reproduce it. There were no cameras, no Photoshop. He took a thin piece of paper, placed it over the original, traced, traced, traced. That hanshita was then carved at that size and then printed. So the reproduction print ended up being actually some fraction smaller than the original. Do this again and do this again, and you can see where we're going. The prints get a little bit smaller and smaller and smaller as the decades go on. Anyway, to cut this chain, what I've done is I've taken that original, I've done my tracing, and I'm going to expand it by about 1% so that my finished print should be pretty much exactly the same size as the museum copy that I've been reproducing. There's a few other things I have to do before actually taking the print out. I have to mark the area that will be the borders of the print so we know where to cut the sky zone, and I have to put in registration marks in the proper places. And the last step is getting the lines themselves ready for printout. You might remember in the previous video I explained I traced at 50% opacity, so I now bring that back up to 100%. Over that I add an adjustment layer, set the saturation to 0, pull the lightness down, and this gives me the tracing layer as a good solid black, checking to see that the thickness and taste of the line hasn't changed at all. I then flatten the file and save it out in TIFF format. Ready to print. But on what? The paper that I use for my hanshita is way thinner than a tissue. If I tried to shove this through my laser printer, it's just going to crumple into a mess. So as you can see in this older video clip I'll reproduce here, I use a spray adhesive and I laminate this thin gampi to a backing paper. The adhesive is a low tack type that will allow me to remove it easily later. And here's the 2-layer sheet, the gampi and the backing sheet, ready for printing. I've experimented with many different settings on my laser printer, and I found one that gives the best results. Clear, thin lines, but not pixelated. If you're going to try this thing yourself, please take trouble to explore your laser printer settings. It can make a huge difference in the results. I used to get quite fat, funny lines on mine, and the clarity of the output has to be as sharp as possible. And here's our output. ready for pasting down onto the block for carving. A month's work done. Not quite sure just how much is still to go. But now I've got to get back to Asakusa. I know I've got to get there because I'm on print party duty tomorrow morning. And if I don't leave pretty soon, the trains may not actually be running tonight. So I've got to get going. As always, let's end this video, a short one this time, thank you. Let's end this video with a little peek outside. Thank you very much and see you next time. I said go outside, but I don't need to go anywhere. This is just from the balcony. And as we can see, there's snow. It's rain turning to snow, and the forecast is for lots more tonight. That's why the ladies have gone home early today. And I better get on the train too without too much delay. This is from the upstairs window. That's Mr. Tamara. Oh, not Mr. Tamara, he's gone now. That's the Tamara-san's place across the river. It'll be a white blanket in a couple more hours. It's a quiet, peaceful town here. The mountains in the far distance there are where the station is, where I have to head tonight. Here's Tamara-san's graveyard. I don't think we should end the video this way. In his garden is a beautiful cherry tree. And very soon now it'll be blossoming. Which will be ready first, those blossoms or my print?